What is up, people? In this video, I'm going to show you how to create your own private instant messaging application. Just like Discord, but it's your own. You self-host it on your own server and you can chat with your friends or family and make sure that your messages are not being supervised. So the software that I'm going to show you in this video is called Matrix. So Matrix is an open source software that is built for secure and decentralized communication. Now the way Matrix works is really interesting, and let me try to give you an idea of how it works. So you get to deploy your own Matrix server, and this is referred as a home server. So multiple users who use Matrix deploy their own home servers. And when I say home server, think of something like Apache or Nginx, which are web servers. But in this case, a home server is a software that is written to use Matrix protocols and to work with Matrix. So there are a lot of different home servers available that use the Matrix protocol and work with it. But the official home server software is called Synapse, which is what we're going to use in this video. But anyway, back to the architecture. So you get to host your own home server, and similarly, other users who are using Matrix also get to host their own home servers. Now, these home servers communicate with each other. So in terms of decentralized architecture, these home servers are individual nodes that can communicate with each other and exchange messages between each other. It's kind of like SMTP if you think about it. So basically, this makes sure that there is no centralized authority or centralized server that controls or handles all the incoming and outgoing messages. Everything is decentralized. And obviously, as it comes with any decentralized software, everything is end-to-end encrypted. So all your messages, your media, your voice calls, etc., are end-to-end encrypted, which means no one can actually view what is in them. So in other words, it means that there is no possibility for surveillance if you configure everything correctly. And I'm going to show you how to do that in this video, so don't worry about it. So as I said, for the home server, we're going to use Synapse, and then we also need a client that can communicate with our hosted Synapse home server so that we can actually use the interface. We can use the interface where we can send messages to friends, receive messages, etc. So for the client, I'm going with Element. Once again, there are like numerous clients and numerous home server softwares that you can use. Element happens to be the most popular client, which is also recommended by Matrix. So I'm going to use Element in this video, but you don't have to use it. You can use other clients as well. Different clients have different user interface. There are also some command line clients as well. So whatever you prefer, you can go ahead and use it. Now, the thing I love about Element is that it's cross-platform, which means you can just go ahead and use your private messaging application from your smartphone. You just have to install the Element app and then connect to your home server, and then you can use it just like WhatsApp or Discord from your mobile. It can be iOS, it can be Android, and there is also a desktop app that you can use just like Discord, right? You can just download the desktop app and use it like Discord on your machine. So it's cross-platform, and I love that about this. And I also want to clarify that I am not sponsored with any of the tools that I'm showing in this video. I just found this genuinely awesome software that can be used to create a private messaging application without much configuration. So anyways, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the first thing you need is obviously a VPS. You can use any cloud provider like AWS, Google Cloud, anything. So I got a VPS for myself here, which is hosted in Germany. So I chose Germany because of its privacy friendly laws, but you can go ahead and use any VPS you want. So on my VPS, as you can see, I have installed Ubuntu 22.04. So you can go ahead and install the same OS on your VPS as well, or any Debian based distro should work fine. But if possible, if you can, install Ubuntu 22.04 because I tested it and it works flawlessly. So once you have a VPS, you can also go ahead and get yourself a domain name. Now this is optional, you don't have to get a domain name, but I just bought this awesome domain called teja.chat, and I'm going to use this domain for my Matrix app, for my private messenger. So I need to link my domain name to my VPS. So in order to do that, I can just go to my DNS settings, and then I'll add a new A type record, which points to the IP address of my VPS. So if I just type in curl ifconfig.me, So this is my public IP address. So I just have to copy this, go back here and paste it here, and then I can just set the TTL to 60. So it says record already exists because I think I've already added it. Yep, there you go. So once you link the domain name to your VPS, the next thing would be to install an SSL certificate, and you can do this very easily with certbot. So I'm gonna go ahead and install certbot. Let me go ahead and first update my repositories, and then I'll go ahead and install certbot. So once that is done, I'm gonna go ahead and create a SSL certificate for my domain name. This is the certbot command that I will use. I'm gonna replace this with my domain name here, which is teja.chat. And yeah, let's go ahead and hit enter. So it's gonna ask me for the email address. So let me put in an email address here. All right, so it looks like our certs are generated, and you can see it creates two files. The first one is the certificate itself, which is at this path, and then the next thing is the private key, which is saved at this path. So you can actually keep a note of these two paths because we will be needing them later. Awesome. So now that I have linked my domain name to my VPS and also generated trusted certs with Let's Encrypt for free, of course, the next thing is to actually go ahead and install the Synapse home server and also the Element client, the Element web client. So let's go ahead and do that. So you can go ahead and install this locally on your VPS, but I like to do it with Docker so that each service is running in its own container, completely isolated from each other. And that's usually the better security practice. So let me first go ahead and create a directory called matrix. And inside this directory, I will create a Docker compose.yaml file. Here is the Docker compose file that I have written. So you can see there are two services, Synapse, which is the home server, and Element, which is the client. So for Synapse, I'm pulling this image, which is the official Docker image from matrix.org for the Synapse home server. And then I'm also running another service called Element, which is the client for using the Synapse web server. And this is the image that I'm pulling it from, which is once again the official image. And if you can also notice at the end of the file here, I also defined a network, a Docker network basically, that I'm using for this Docker compose file. So for the Synapse server, I assigned its IP address to 10.10.10.2. So this is the private IP address that this particular service, which is the Synapse home server, is going to run on. And similarly for Element, I assigned 10.10.10.3, which is also a Docker private IP that this service, which is the Element web client, is going to run on. So these two services are completely isolated from each other, and they also run in a private Docker network. You know, each of them have an assigned IP address. So it's a pretty neat way of doing things. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and save this. Before I can go ahead and start my Synapse server, I need to generate a configuration file called homeserver.yaml. So in order to do that, I will run this Docker compose command. And basically, I'm gonna set the Synapse server name to teja.chat, because that is my server name. And that's it. So if I hit enter, this is going to go ahead and first create the custom Docker network that is defined in the Docker compose file. And then it's going to go ahead and pull the Synapse Docker image. And finally, it has created a config file. So if I type ls here, there's a new folder called Synapse. So let me go into that folder. And in here, you can find homeserver.yaml file. And this is the configuration that Synapse server will use. Now, similarly, we also need to set a configuration for the Element web client. So let me do that. I'm going to come back and I'm going to create a new file called Synapse. Oh, sorry, it's element config.json. And this is the configuration that I'll use for my Element web client. So basically, I'm setting the default server config. I'm setting the home server base URL to teja.chat, which is my server name. And then I'm also setting identity server to null. So you can set this to matrix.org. So basically what an identity server is, it allows the users on your home server to link themselves with, let's say a phone number or an email address, etc. So it's basically to manage the identity of users on your server. So since we are trying to go for completely private, completely isolated environment, I'm going to set this to null. So that means the users on our server will not be able to associate themselves with an email address or a phone number, which is fine. And now I can just go ahead and type in docker compose up, and this is going to go ahead and pull the images in the docker compose YAML file. The Synapse image is already pulled, so now it's pulling the element, and it has started the server. So if you don't want to see all this output, let me just cancel this. I'm gonna add a -d flag so it doesn't print out anything. So there you go. It says container matrix synapse 1 started, matrix element 1 started. So if I do docker ps, you can see both of these containers are now active, they are up. So to cross verify that, let me say curl http 10.10. What is the IP address of my Synapse? Let me cross check that. Docker compose.yaml file, let me open that. So this is the IP address of my Synapse server. So I'm going to copy it and I'm going to send a request, a curl request to that. And also I forgot to mention this, but matrix runs on port 8008. So I'm going to type in 8008 here, and we did get a response. So that means our Synapse home server is running in the private Docker network. Awesome. And the same thing we can do for Element web client. And Element web client is running on 10.10.10.3, and it runs on the default web port, HTTP port, which is 80. Hit enter, and there you go, we got some HTML response. So that means both our services are up and running. But we are not still done here, because these two services are running in a private Docker network, as I said, which means they cannot be accessed from the internet. So in order to be able to do that, we're going to set up an Nginx reverse proxy. So let me go ahead and install Nginx first. Let me see if Nginx is installed. Yep, it is already installed. Awesome. So I'm going to create a proxy configuration file at etc/nginx/conf.d, and I'm going to name it as proxy.conf. So this is the proxy configuration, and let me try to explain what it actually means. So we are asking our Nginx reverse proxy to listen on port 443, which is HTTPS, and also on port 8448, which is the SSL port that the Matrix protocol uses. And then we are also defining the SSL certificates that we just generated with certbot. So these are the SSL certificates. You can see these are the paths where these certificates are generated. The first one is the certificate, the second one is the private key. And then I'm also setting the server name to teja.chat, and this is the important part. You can see a location block here that basically matches this particular regex, basically /_matrix or /_synapse/client. Whenever a request is sent to either of these two endpoints, it's going to proxy that traffic to HTTP 10.10.10.2. And guess what that is? That is our Synapse server. And 8008, as I said, is the Matrix port where the Matrix protocol is running on the Docker container. And then we're also forwarding some important headers to the proxy. And the next location block that we have here is basically the root of the website. And we are proxying all that traffic to 10.10.10.3, which, you guessed it right, is the Element web client. So basically, when the user goes to teja.chat, it's going to tunnel all that traffic to the Element web client, which is running as a Docker container. So the Element web client will be served to the user. And similarly, we are once again forwarding all the important headers through the proxy. And finally, we have another server block that basically redirects HTTP to HTTPS. So that's about it. That's all about the proxy, the reverse proxy with Nginx. So let me go ahead and reload Nginx. I'll say systemctl reload Nginx, and let's see if we ran into any issues here. I'm gonna do status, misspelled that. Let's see, so it's active, which means there are no errors. So if I go to teja.chat, hey, would you look at that? We are now able to access the Element web client. So you can go ahead and sign in or create an account. And once again, this interface, like the background image, the text here that says welcome to Element, all of this can be configured because it's basically an open source software, and you can include different options in your Element configuration file to change all of these. You can customize it as you want. So anyway, let me go ahead and create an account here. And by default, it's going to set the home server to matrix.org, but that is not the home server. That is not our home server. So I'm going to click on edit here. I'm going to say https teja.chat, which is my home server. Click on continue. But as you can see, it says registration has been disabled on this home server. That is because we have not enabled the registration. So let's fix that. Let me go back to my homeserver.yaml file. So I'm going to open this up. And at the end of this file here, I'm going to say enable registration true. Now, this is still not going to work because Element requires you to include a CAPTCHA verification from Google to avoid spam, of course. So that's pretty easy to do as well. It takes like a minute to set it up. So let me go ahead and set that up. So you can log into the Google reCAPTCHA dashboard and then you can register your site here. So I'm going to say teja.chat and I'm going to add my domain here, which is teja.chat, and make sure you set the reCAPTCHA type to challenge v2, and then also make sure to set it to I am not a robot checkbox, because that is the only type of reCAPTCHA that Element supports as of now. So yep, that's it. I'm going to click on submit, and that's going to create two keys for you. One is called the site key and the other one is called the secret key. So you can go ahead and add these two into your homeserver.yaml file. So let me go ahead and do that. So reCAPTCHA public key, I'm going to set this to my site key here. And then reCAPTCHA private key, I'm going to set this to my secret key here. So once you do that, go back to your Google reCAPTCHA dashboard, go to settings, and make sure that you uncheck this option that says verify the origin of reCAPTCHA solutions and save. And you have now set up Google reCAPTCHA on the registration page. And then I also need to set enable registration CAPTCHA to true so that the CAPTCHA is actually displayed on the registration page. So let me now go ahead and save this up, and I will restart Docker Compose with Docker Compose restart. That's going to restart the containers, and I will also reload Nginx here. So let me go back to teja.chat here, click on create account. Let me try adding https teja.chat. And now I am able to create an account. So let me set the username to Teja. Let me set a password and click on register. And you can see it shows me the CAPTCHA verification and I'm in. So I'm going to choose this to friends and family. And this is my private chat application, just like Discord. So over here on the left side, you can see you can add different people to your server. And then you can also add different rooms to your server. As I already explained, this is a decentralized protocol, which means my home server will now be able to communicate with the other home servers across the globe, across the internet. So right now I am the only user in my server. So let me go ahead and add another user, but this time I'm going to do it from my mobile, from my smartphone, from my iPhone. So on iOS in the App Store, there is an app called Element Messenger. So you can go ahead and install it. So it's basically the Element client, but for iOS. It's also available for Android, of course. So I'm going to open this up. So I'm going to click on create account, friends and family. And by default, it sets the home server to matrix.org, but I'm going to click on edit here. And I'm going to change this to my home server, which is teja.chat. Click on confirm. And now I'm shown the option to create a new account. So let me create a new account. I'll set the username to Alice. So it once again shows the CAPTCHA verification. Allow notifications. Take me home. So now we have two users in the server. So let me show you the way you can identify different users on Matrix network, right? So if we click on the plus icon here to add new people, Here you can go ahead and type the identification for that user. So for me, my username on my server is Teja. So my global identification or my global username would be something like this: @ and then Teja, which is my local username on my home server, followed by a colon and then my home server name, which is teja.chat. So this is my global username, my global identifier. So other home servers on the internet can use this identifier to send me direct messages. It's like a username, right? It's like a global username. So anyway, let me start a conversation with the user that I just created from my iPhone. So the username for that is Alice, and then followed by a colon, and then the home server name, which is teja.chat. Go, and there we go. So let me go ahead and send a message, and I got the message on my mobile phone. So if I click on accept, I can actually now go ahead and chat with the other person. Pretty neat, isn't it? So just like this, you can also go ahead and create new rooms. So you can click on plus here, click on create room, and you can create either a private or a public room. So let me give test room and click on create room, and this will create a private room. But you can also create a public room, and you can configure your home server so that other home servers can join or view this public room that is in your home server. So that's another setting that you can do if you want. But in this video, we're going for complete isolation, right? Completely private. So we're not going to do that. But you can also do it the other way around, which means you can actually join rooms which are on different home servers. And to do that, you can click on this plus icon, click on explore public rooms. And over here on the right side, you can click on add new server. And let me add matrix.org. Click on add. And these are the different rooms that are available to join. So I can go ahead and join to these rooms. And do note that these rooms are on different home servers and not on my server. Similarly, you can also chat with people on a different home server. And you can do that by clicking on plus here, and then you can enter the global username of that user. So no matter if the user is on a different home server, you will still be able to contact them. This feature is called federation, which means home servers communicating with each other. And you can actually go ahead and disable this if you want complete isolation. And as a matter of fact, since we are going for complete isolation, completely private environment, let's go ahead and do that. So I'll open up my homeserver.yaml file, and at the end here, I'll set federation domain whitelist to an empty list like this. So now if I go ahead and save this file and do a Docker compose restart. If I now try to go ahead and explore public rooms and select matrix.org here, you can see it says failed to query public rooms. The reason being, we just disabled the federation feature on our home server. So that means our home server cannot communicate with the other home servers and vice versa. Anyway, so Matrix also supports VoIP calls. For example, let me go ahead and try to call Alice here, and I am now getting a call from Teja. So if I try to answer that, call failed, let me accept this, and I'm now in a voice call. So you can also do video calls. Let me test doing video calls. This time let me call from Alice to Teja. So I'm going to click on video call on my phone. Let's see. So we're getting a call, accept, allow the camera, look at that. So we are also able to do, let me mute my mic here. So we are also able to do VoIP voice and video calls in our application. So that is how you set up your own private messaging application with Matrix. Now let's explore how you can do administrative actions in your home server. For example, if you don't want random users to create new accounts on your private chat application, you can disable registration and you can create users manually using an admin interface. So just like that, you can do a lot of other administrative actions like create new rooms, manage users, etc., etc. So basically, it's your home server. You are the admin. So you should be able to have some administrative privileges to manage your server, manage your users, rooms, etc., etc. So you can actually do that by using the admin API that Synapse offers. So if I just type in Synapse admin API. So this is the documentation for the admin API. There are different endpoints that you can access with the correct authorization token, and you can do a lot of stuff. But it's not convenient to manually send these requests, right? So for the same reason, there exists a web interface. I think it's called Synapse admin GitHub. So this is a web interface that allows you to do administrative tasks on your home server. So you can go ahead and use this to connect to your home server as an administrator and do all the administrative stuff. So before we can actually go ahead and use this, we need an administrator account. Right now, we don't have any. So in order to create an administrative account, I'm gonna go back to my terminal here and I'll say Docker PS. So this is the container. Yeah, this is the Synapse container. So I'm going to copy the container ID here and I will exec into it. I'll say docker exec it followed by the container. And then I'll say bash because I want to use bash inside the container. So hit enter. I am now inside the container. Let me clear the screen here. And I'm going to use this command right here, which says register new matrix user and then the path to the homeserver.yaml file. So in my case, it should exist at /data/homeserver.yaml file, and then localhost 8008 is where my Synapse server is running locally inside the Docker container. I'm going to execute this and it asks me to give it a username. Let me say root and a password. Confirm. And this is the important part. It asks you if you want to make this user an admin. So I'm going to type in yes. And the user is now created. So we can now exit out of the container and then we can run the Synapse admin UI. So there is a Docker image, I believe, for this. Yep. So you can directly go ahead and run this Docker command. So let me go ahead and do that. You don't have to do this on your VPS. You can if you want, but I am doing it on my local machine and not on my VPS. So I'll just run this Docker command, which is going to basically pull this the Docker image, and then it's going to make it available on port 8080. Click on enter. Looks like I need to run the terminal as an administrator. Let's try that again. So it's pulling the image and it is now active. So if I go to localhost :8080. This is the interface. So over here, you can set your home server URL. You might set this to teja.chat, but if you do, it's not going to work. The reason is that we are not exposing our admin API through our Nginx reverse proxy for security reasons. So if I open up my Nginx configuration here, so this is my Nginx reverse proxy configuration. You can see we are only exposing /_matrix and /_synapse/client, but we are not exposing the admin API path. And that is intentional because we don't want to expose our Synapse admin API to the internet because, you know, there may be evil people who try to exploit it. So the admin API can only be accessed inside the private Docker network, which means it can only be accessed from this private IP address, and you cannot access this private IP address from outside this network, outside the Docker network. So in order for you to use this admin interface and connect to your home server and do the administration stuff, you need to set up an SSH tunnel that basically forwards all your traffic to this private IP address, which is running inside the Docker network. And in order to do that, you can make use of SSH tunneling. So I'm going to open up a new tab here and I'm going to type in this SSH command. I'm going to say SSH-n-l, and then I want to forward all the traffic on my local host, which is 127.0.0.1 on port 8008 to 10.10.10.10.2 on port 8008. So I'm forwarding all the traffic from my local host port 8008 to the Docker IP port 8008. and I'm going to say root @ followed by my VPS IP address. So I'm going to run this. It's going to ask me for the password. Let me type in the password. And now the SSH tunnel is set up. So if I go to localhost :8008, there we go. We are now able to access our Synapse server, which is running inside the Docker container on our VPS. So in other words, we are able to communicate with the Docker private network from our local host. So I'll come back to the admin interface, and for the home server URL, I'll say localhost :8008. And the username is root. The password, click on sign in, and we are in. This is the admin interface, and you can see we have different kinds of things that we can do here. For example, you can see all the users that are currently part of our home server. We have Alice, we have root, which is the administrator, and we have Teja, which is the first account that we created. And if you go to rooms, you will see all the rooms that exist on our home server. You can see the users media, yeah, you can actually also go ahead and enable disable federation here, add new servers for the federation, etc. You can go ahead and create new registration tokens, but the most important part I would like to show you is the ability to add new users. So if you click on create, you will actually be able to add new users to your home server. So let me create Bob. You don't need to set this, I think. So I can make this administrator or not. Click on save. And just like that, we have created a new user to our home server. So this is very helpful if you want the users to join your server on an invite only basis, which means random users cannot create an account on your server, but only you can create users and invite them to your server. All right, so I think I've shown everything I wanted to show in this video. There are obviously a lot of different other things that you can do with Matrix. You can refer to the documentation of the Synapse home server to see the different options that you can set, the different features you can enable for your users, etc. It is impossible to cover all of them in a single video, so I will leave the links to the documentation in the description below. Go ahead and check them out. Thanks for watching this video. I really hope you learned something new from it. If you did like this video, please do not forget to leave a thumbs up below and also comment in the comment section. If you're not yet a subscriber, please do hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon for instant updates about my new releases. So I'll see you in the next video. Until then, cheers.